Hey everybody, and welcome to the Gutenberg Live Show. I am your host, Joe Casabona. I'm here with my good friend Zach Gordon. Zach, how are you
Howdy,
today?
y'all. Doing well, man. Doing well. Happy to be here chatting about the GBs.
Absolutely, yeah. It hasn't been a very, we'll say, fruitful news cycle since the last show. I think a lot of people have been concerned with the GDPR, everyone's other favorite G word. But there's some good stuff that we're gonna cover, and then a few personal updates, or I guess a few course-related updates, we'll say.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but the big news is that 2.9 is out. And I don't know about you, Zach, but the first thing that I observed about 2.9 is that from a UI standpoint, from a user standpoint, not a lot has changed. Nothing glaring or nothing super noticeable has changed in the UI. And that has some ramifications for what I believe. But what's changed on the developer side?
Yeah, I think, well, I will add they added a little delete button when you have an empty paragraph, which I
Mm,
kind of like because
yeah,
having something there, even if it's empty, like bothers me for some reason.
yeah.
So, yeah, overall, though, not a ton of updates. There is some cool stuff. They're continuing to enhance the plugin API. Like you'll see that first bullet point is for um, adding a little kind of pinned version of it. And for folks who don't know, the Sidebar API is the ability to work with that either partial flyout that is the whole edit area for either the document or a block like inspector. So you could create your own custom ones of those, but also eventually taking out the flyout of the whole page and stuff like that. So um, they're continuing to evolve that. That's one of the top changes they have listed there. Let's see, I had a few others that caught my attention. They're continuing to work with some user permission stuff. It's a very small update that they had. I'm sure it was quite a bit of work, but continuing to think through in different areas how are user capabilities going to be checked because we have some hacks on making certain things like controlled by user access. If you've checked out our VIP course, VIP Gutenberg, we talk about some of that stuff there, but they're making it slowly working towards a place where you could have an easy to implement solution. So that's cool. What are some of the dev stuff? Again, the whole blocks library got moved, so there's some moves with that happening. There's some little like developer slash UI things like they're moving stuff. They moved a lot of stuff out from being a toolbar. Like if you added a header, for example, the left right toggle and stuff used to be there, or text align, and now that got moved, then it got moved over to the inspector, and now some things are getting moved back, some more things are becoming automated. Like one UI change that I love is that when you have the inspector open and you click on a block, it opens that block inspector instead of just showing the main document, which I think is like total, you know, makes sense behavior. So I'm glad to see that that was implemented. I don't know, Joe,
Nice.
what do you think on that feature? I like that it just auto selects the
Yeah,
block.
that's super cool. I didn't play around with that one too much. I kind of downloaded 2.9, opened it up, played around with it, and was like, well, the UI looks basically the same. You know, I always evaluate it to see if I'm gonna do like a new update video or
Yeah.
whatever, but that is super cool. I'm gonna have to explore it a little bit more.
I'll throw in one last thing too. I mean, there's a bunch of little things like that, but they updated both React and Redux, like the versions of it underneath the abstraction layer, and they may have done this in the past before, so this may not be news. But for me, it's cool that hey, we made it to an update and we didn't have to patch any of these underlying frameworks, so that's a good sign, right? We haven't even launched yet. That would have been some work, so that was cool. But I think from the dev perspective. Um, like we've said, like they're getting more towards refinement. I've heard some back channel things of definitely in the Slack channel talking about how do we roll this out to larger groups and when do we start looking at this. I don't know what role WordPress.com is going to play in that, but I know that that's still part of it. Nothing definitive for folks looking for dates, but yeah.
Yeah, that's maybe the most common question I've been getting lately, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. But I've been on like the live event circuit for Gutenberg, and I think the question I've been getting most often is, hey, it's after April. When's 5.0 coming out? And we don't know yet. I've been telling people that I think the canary in the coal mine, the thing that will let us know that Gutenberg is nearly ready, or 5.0 is nearly ready, is when 4.9.7 comes out, because at that point, I think we're gonna get the little box that says, "Hey, try Gutenberg." That's at least the latest rumor. I don't know how true that is, but when we see that, when we see that get rolled out to the greater WordPress user community, um, we'll know that the team is confident enough to roll it into core at that point.
So yeah, not a ton of stuff there. I guess we can kind of, since we're not really promoting it, but people have started to tweet a little bit about this plugin called Ramp for Gutenberg. I've seen that out a
Yeah,
little bit. I don't know
yeah,
what status it's at, but
yeah. So this showed up on
yeah.
managewp.org. Somebody posted a link to the repository. Um, so we'll link the GitHub in the repository as well. We've teased this a little bit, right? I know I've definitely teased it because it was announced from WordPress VIP officially in March that they were working on something. Um, and that something is basically a tool that lets you choose where you want Gutenberg to load. So if you think that, hey, I don't want, I have a custom post type that I think Gutenberg is going to break. With Gutenberg Ramp, you can choose not to load it for that custom post type. Or, hey, I have this specific page that is like all HTML. I don't want Gutenberg to load there. Um, then you can specify by ID to exclude Gutenberg there. So it's making its way. Uh, well, it's out on GitHub right now. So if you want to watch for updates there, or on the WordPress VIP blog, I'm sure there will be more information about that coming soon. But I know there's a lot of consternation. A lot of people are nervous about upgrading to 5.0. Um,
So
so
I I know we're the Gutenberg fanboys, right? Like we're out here talking about it, we're working with it, we're trying to show folks how to use and work with it. But I have picked up a similar vibe. I think we're going through waves of like
mhm.
there was a ton of GB hate and resistance. There's been some cool like getting into it, people experimenting, and I think we kind of rode that wave a little bit. Those early adopters, plugin developers, they're all in it. They're all learning this stuff, trying to figure out how to make it work. They have their opinions, but now we're seeing the like as we get closer to adoption, like I don't know, man. I downloaded the two Gutenberg themes that we talked about in the last episode. One is the atomic themes, and the other was co-blocks, I
Mhm.
think. And started playing with them for my personal site because I'm like, okay, let's give this a go. And there were definitely still times where I'm like, man, a page builder is a way richer experience right now, even just for the editor. But um, is what it is. That's not even considering some of the migration things and other stuff going on. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah, we're definitely, I think, kind of in this like valley lull of like it's gonna start notching back up like a freaking roller coaster ride, you know?
yeah, absolutely. And I've been kind of taking the temperature because last week I spoke at uh, Pantheon, the Pantheon Gutenberg webinar series. I did a paid event for iThemes called Preparing Your Clients for Gutenberg. And I spoke at a local to me meetup, the WordPress Lehigh Valley meetup. Um, and there's a lot of, I think there are a few camps of people where it's either users who are worried that Gutenberg's going to break their site, or it's mostly freelancers who are like, how is this going to affect my client site? What kind of workload is it going to put on me? I get the question a lot. What happens? So what? Our clients are just going to have like freedom to make our websites ugly now? Um, and I think that last question is the easiest to address, right? My personal philosophy is once you hand over the keys to a website, it's not yours anymore. It's your clients, and they can do whatever they want with it. So I know maybe it sucks to see this beautiful design you made, and now there's like an ugly black and red paragraph on it, but it's your client's website. It would be like if the car dealer told you that you can't make modifications to the car you just bought because it's as it's the prettiest that they think it's going to be. So, um, and if they break something, great. That's more work for you, right? That's more paid work for you. So that's my personal philosophy. That said, you can lock things down a little bit. You can do block templates with Gutenberg. You can create custom color palettes so that they can only use their brand colors or something like that.
You can
there
also lock down what blocks are available even. So you don't want them designing crazy stuff, take away all the crazy stuff. Paragraphs and and images, that's all you get.
right. That's all you get, right? So, that said, you can lock that down. But I think I'm speaking to just a greater philo. This is why people don't want to use page builders either. Like, I did this, and now my client's gonna break it. It's not you versus your client. You guys are on the same team, and you should be training your client to know best practices. But you know what? If one of their interns gets in there and designs a flyer or designs a page that looks like a yard sale flyer, that's on them. That's their website. And so, um, I
Yeah,
just think,
although I will like to support some folks in that condition. I know that it's sometimes just a personal thing. It could be a design spec, right? It could be like that company hired me to build it this way.
mhm.
And then you got to look at those options for locking it down or maybe even turning off Gutenberg, maybe some other approach. But that's a custom thing, right? Otherwise, I think what you're saying, Joe, applies and there are ways to work with that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So
then,
you mentioned, oh, sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
no, go ahead. I was gonna move on.
Oh, so was I.
All right, sweet. You go ahead. I've been talking too much.
Well, I was going to say you mentioned Pantheon. I want to give them a shout out. They've been doing some really cool work from early on, up through some of the stuff Daniel has done with the testing plugins. And now they have a whole string of live events going on, some interview series with some great folks involved with the process. And I've also seen some stuff. They released like a guided migration path, and it shows you how you can spin up a free Pantheon site for staging, throw your site in there and test it out. So I don't know. I mean, everybody's trying to be involved in their own ways, and this is a really cool way for a hosting company to be involved, both with providing resources, but also some stuff that like only they could do because they have this huge and wonderful testing environment set up and structure. So I'll throw those links in the notes, but you had mentioned that earlier, so I thought that was a pretty good one to circle back on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that came up during I kind of kicked off the series with an introduction to Gutenberg.
Sure did.
And that came up. The so Pantheon is free to use until you go live, which is not something I've seen for any other hosting provider.
Although technically, if you want to use one of their test URLs that has .pantheon in it, it's free even if it's a live site that people go to.
Oh yeah, there you go. So okay, so that's two things, right? They've set up their own live testing environments, but then also like if you want to try Gutenberg yourself in a server environment that's low risk, you can do that with Pantheon. Which I also think is really cool. So, yeah, props to them for hosting this series, and for being like a cool, active part of the community and promoting a migration path to Gutenberg. Um, so kind of talking about the other areas of like nervousness. Um, I had this webinar with iThemes, and I don't think I did anything to assuage the fears. Because it was a live demo that I
Yeah, tell
hadn't.
us about this demo, man.
Yeah, so it was a live demo. I hadn't tried it yet. I wanted the attendees to see what was like what happened without kind of like a trial run, right? Because they're not going to get a trial run when they upgrade their website to Gutenberg. And I picked creator courses because it's using a lot of stuff. It's using WooCommerce, it's using LearnDash, it's using bbPress for the forums, it's using advanced custom fields, and it's using a Genesis theme, Academy Pro. So I thought, man, if something's gonna break, my blog is my blog. If something's gonna break, it'll be on this site. And it was pretty smooth sailing for the first little bit, right? Pages, posts and pages converted okay. We did find an issue where if you have custom HTML uh in the editor. So maybe you have like your own div definitions, which happens a lot with Studio Press themes, right? They have if you want to do like a pricing table, they're going to give you the HTML for the pricing table. If you have something like that, Gutenberg actually strips out any unrecognized HTML and converts it to blocks. So when I converted my pricing page, I lost the pricing table. Luckily, I had revisions on, so I rolled back and I just made sure I copied that HTML and I made it a custom HTML block, which Gutenberg has. But I also made sure to submit feedback to say, hey, um, if somebody has custom HTML in the editor, in the classic editor, it totally breaks when you convert it to Gutenberg blocks. And what I would like to see, and I said as much in the feedback, is if the block conversion process detects let's say a div tag or a section tag, then it converts that whole thing to custom HTML. And I know that's not foolproof, but it's at least accounting for the uh, a good bit, right? A majority of custom HTML. Um, so that was interesting. That was a little bit of a scary thing, but we made it through that. I said, "All right, guys, don't worry. We have revisions. There's a way around this. So if you run into this issue, now you know it exists. Now you know how to fix it, right?" Uh, but things got a little hairier when I tried to open BBPress. So both BBPress and LearnDash apparently, I didn't dig into the code to check this, but when you visit the page, there's no Gutenberg editor, which means that they don't have show and rest turned on in the custom post type definition, right? That's the way that you get the Gutenberg editor to show up for your custom post type. But what was happening was I was getting a fatal JavaScript error. TinyMCE wasn't loading from the Gutenberg vendor folder. So I thought, all right, there's a conflict with BBPress and Gutenberg. No big deal. I don't have a Gutenberg ready version of BBPress yet. Same thing with LearnDash. Like I'm not using the if there's a beta that exists for those plugins, I wasn't using them. But then the same thing happened for LearnDash, and I thought, all right, this is peculiar. Something is blocking Gutenberg from loading TinyMCE. So I opened up my local site in the live stream to show, all right, what happens if I only have BBPress and Gutenberg turned on? Everything was fine. What if I just have LearnDash and Gutenberg turned on? Everything was fine. So there's a weird conflict, and I spent a good 20 minutes talking through different testing scenarios to see what would happen. All right, I'll disable these plugins. I'll disable the plugins that I think are the most likely ones. That didn't work. All right, I'm going to disable all the plugins and turn them on one by one. And eventually I just said, all right, guys, well, I don't want to waste the rest of this webinar on trying to troubleshoot this, but I'll keep you updated. Because I had to know. I had to know what was happening. And so the rest of the webinar went off fine. I said, a few things to consider here is I know that Studio Press is working on Gutenberg friendly versions of their themes. I'm not using the latest version of any plugin except Gravity Forms because I wanted to show them the Gravity Forms block. So, keep all of that in mind is that we're a little bit at the mercy of third-party plugin developers. So the rest of the webinar ended fine, I think. But afterwards, I was like, I need to find out what's happening. Well,
did you figure it out?
I did figure it out. I don't know why. I haven't filed a bug report yet because I can't really articulate what's happening. But I disabled. I have Yoast SEO for WooCommerce and Yoast SEO installed. I disabled those two and I hit the BBPress page and it worked. And then I turned Yoast SEO back on and I hit the page again, and it still worked. Um, so I assume I assumed that it was some conflict with Yoast SEO. Maybe something got enqueued or dequeued, and when I disabled the plugin, the disable function fired, and everything was okay. I hit the the learn dash area, and I had to do the same thing. I had to disable Yoast, and it worked, and then re-enabling Yoast, I believe, made it still work. So super weird bug. Um,
Interesting.
and I tweeted as much, and Yoast was like, "Hey, file a bug report," and I was like, "I don't I don't have like this. It's not going to be useful at this point." So, um, this is not a knock on anybody either, right? Um, it's just that I'm using a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. Gutenberg made some code changes in 2.8, so I'm sure plugin developers were probably affected a little bit by that. And again, I wasn't using anything that claimed to be Gutenberg ready. So those are
Fair.
all things to remember, right? Like yeah. So I suspect as we get closer to a beta or a release candidate, we'll see a lot more I'm sure plugin developers right now, especially like BB Press, like JTrip, right? John Jacoby's like basically in charge of that. I'm sure the BB Press community is aware of Gutenberg and testing where they can. LearnDash, Justin Ferriman is very aware of what's going on in the community. He's written about Gutenberg. It's just that they probably and Yoast has their own video series about Gutenberg. They probably just don't have anything that's ready for prime time yet. So,
Or
um,
like you said, you're not grabbing necessarily a latest alpha or beta
right.
development version of a plugin, right?
Yeah, exactly. To save time, I didn't do that on the webinar. So, um, I did like a cursory look to see what was available, but I didn't dig deep, right? So, there were a few things that I could have done better, but I'm glad that happened, right? I'm glad that it didn't just go smoothly, because there are gonna be people where it doesn't go smoothly for, and they're gonna be like, "What do I do?"
Yeah.
So, to put a bow on this, uh, somebody asked, so what would you do in this situation if it was your client site? I would say, well, there are a few tools that we have here that are not Gutenberg ready, right? And if this was like if 5.0 comes out and it's still like
Yeah.
this, I would enable the classic editor plugin, and I would say, well, we'll keep an eye on these plugins to see when they do fully support Gutenberg, and we'll try again. The classic editor plugin should be used as a band-aid, right? As a way to get you to full Gutenberg readiness, not as a I'm never using Gutenberg, so I'm just going to use the classic editor plugin. Whew. Yeah, so
So
that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I think that confirms it, man. So that's where we are with a lot of the Gutenberg stuff, and I think where folks are, and I think it represents the community fairly well. Hopefully, this is helpful in terms of some updates, but you know, grab it in stage and start playing around with it. But also, like you pointed out, the plugins need to develop as well, and folks are aware and working on it. So hopefully, when you do this in, I almost said a couple months from now, which is kind of pegging Gutenberg is not rolling out in the next couple weeks, right? But that wouldn't
Right.
surprise me.
Yeah, right. People so when pressed for an answer, I'll say like maybe the end of the summer, maybe. Like earliest. Um I think a lot of people thought if we didn't hit the April deadline that it would drop at WordCamp Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I
Seems
don't
a
think
little soon. I don't
yeah,
think.
that's too soon. So, um I'm thinking end of the summer at the earliest. And also keep in mind, for those not familiar with the development cycle, we're going to have a beta. We might even have a final version of the Gutenberg plugin right before it gets merged into core, but we'll have a
Yeah, I would hope
5.0
so.
beta. We'll have a 5.0 release candidate, several release candidates probably. So we'll have a good bit of lead time with the what's close to the final version of 5.0 to test with as well.
Yeah. And we're trying to help you get there, man. I don't know if it's too soon to mention, but I'm very excited about our theme development course. It is super close now. I've finished up my stuff. I know you're wrapping up yours. And I think this is going to be helpful because one, it felt good to get out of a developer focus, which is the courses I've been doing with this, and back into the theme world, which is a little bit more laid back. And it's a little bit more laid back what you have to add to Guten or to a theme to make it Gutenberg compatible. But there's definitely also some stuff that you want to think through and work out. So I'm really looking forward to this course, and that should be soon, soon come, right?
Absolutely. I'm hoping to wrap up my stuff this week for a oh well we're at the end of May. I think I said June 1 is my target, but we'll see.
Yep.
Or our target for launch maybe, but we'll see. Um on that same token, I don't know what are there any developer course updates at this point for you, Zach?
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna be going through by the this was my plan this week to go through and make a few updates because they move some stuff around. So it's mostly like when I walk through the core architecture of it,
Mhm.
it's changed a bit. But in terms of actual code, there were some things that changed a while back, but they're still kind of backwards compatible. So honestly, I'm waiting. I'd love to wait until we get this in WordPress because the code structure is going to change so much once it's in WordPress core. I don't think there's just going to be like a Gutenberg folder, right? So I'm very curious for that. So hopefully nothing. It doesn't look like anything is broken necessarily, but I do need to go make some updates. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Uh, for me, for the user course, the last week has been very, very eye-opening for me. And in that vein, I'm not only going to update the content of the course, but I'm going to, I don't want to say switch focus, but I'm going to make it more clearly a training course, right? So,
Hmm.
uh, it's I feel like the course is a little bit haphazard, and this is not feedback I've gotten. This is just now that I'm 5 months into using Gutenberg, as opposed to when the course rolled out, when Gutenberg was just usable essentially. Um, I have a better idea of um, how I would approach everything, and I'm going to make it more focused for users. So we'll build something because that's like that's my whole thing. We're going to build a thing that you can see and use. But I'm also going to add more resources for freelancers because I want freelancers to be able to make money off of my course, right? By maybe buying it in bulk and reselling it to their clients, or joining the affiliate program and sending them their affiliate link to their clients, and saved some time too, right? You're probably gearing up for GDPR and now WordPress 5.0. You have a lot on your plate, and if I can give you a good training resource, that's one less thing you need to worry about. So keep an eye out for that. I'll tweet the link and stuff like that. But my course is going to get some pretty good changes and a lot of really good resources, checklists, email scripts, and a couple of extra services that might be helpful to you as well.
Nice. Well, we're living and we're learning. After WordCamp Europe, in fact, this week I'm going to start planning for my advanced Gutenberg development course, which I'm not in a rush to do, but that'll get into some stuff that hasn't been in the normal block development. So yeah, I love it. Refining what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all I have on the list. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter show, I think.
Yeah,
Hopefully, there'll be a lot of news next time, though.
well, I look forward to it, my friend. I think next time will be our last one before WordCamp Europe, possibly. Um, so yeah, folks, send in your questions if you have them. We'll try to keep the updates coming.
Yep. And one more thing before we go, man, oh man. One more thing before we go. This episode is sponsored by Give. Make sure to check out Give WP. They are a donation plugin for WordPress. They are 100% free. You can download the plugin for free and start taking donations today with PayPal. They, of course, have some premium add-ons that are absolutely fantastic for, let's say, recurring donations or using Stripe. If you like hate PayPal and you're like, I'll never use it, you can get the Stripe add-on and a whole bunch of other things. So go to GiveWP, check them out, let them know we sent you, and say thanks for supporting what is now the Gutenberg Live Show with Zac and Joe. And until next time, I hate to go. Bye, everybody.
Ciao, folks.